Hello, welcome to Books and Things. My guest tonight is Elaine Bentley Baughn, MS LMFT, and she's going to explain those letters to us in a minute. She is a psychotherapist with over 25 years of experience, certified in EMDR, we'll find out what that is, a brain-based rapid processing therapy, as well as in Feng Shui.
Feng Shui.
Feng Shui. I don't practice it, obviously, because I can't even say it. An energy-based therapy for the spaces in which humans live. She presents tools therapists, individuals, and couples can use for improving communication and self-management. And that's not enough. She's also written a book, 5 Rules for Drama-Free Living. Excellent book.
Thank you.
And welcome.
I appreciate it.
She's also a member of C Kappa, and that and $2.50 you get your coffee anyway. You're reading over your information. You've been very busy, and I think therapy is underrated. I went through 13 months of therapy, and what I found out was 2 things. At the end, I was starting to invent stories to tell him, and he really didn't say anything. And I'm the one that really got myself out of the problem with his help. Mm-hmm. I couldn't have done it without him, but you end up talking most of the time yourself, and all of a sudden you go, I didn't know that.
Different therapists have different approaches. And one of the things that, I'll tell you about my letters first.
Yes.
MS stands for Master of Science, and LMFT is Licensed Marriage and Family Therapist. Ah. The Master of Science is in a program for marriage and family therapy, which means the way I was initially trained in the field was to think of people in terms of the systems they grew up in, the families that they grew up in, and how they take those patterns into the workplace and into the families they create. Probably the easiest example is that we tend to treat our bosses like parents. Very common, if you didn't get what you needed from a particular parent, it's very easy to kind of look for that from a boss. And so that's a dynamic that can come forward in different kinds of relationships. So that undergirds my training. Early in my practice, I discovered that there were a lot of people out there who had had serious trauma. And I felt the need to go get more training. And so I went to Masters and Johnson's sexual trauma treatment training. And then as soon as I could afford it, I went for EMDR training. EMDR stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing. What that means in regular language is it's a kind of trauma that utilizes the way the brain functions, the 2 halves of the brain, as well as cognition, your thinker, and how the body is processing, or how you feel physically, as well as the stories you tell yourself. So it weaves all that together and helps you digest the stuff you've been through.
Wow. You don't realize how many functions there are in the body and the brain, and because we take it all for granted.
Yeah, and it all starts with the body.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned something about trauma, and I have a question here, as soon as I get my glasses back on. Why is trauma different from memory?
Other memories.
Trauma
memories are stored with the sensations rather than as a story. So if I ask you what you did yesterday, you might say you got up, you had breakfast, you met with somebody for a meeting, you took a walk, you played with the dog, and then at the end of the day, you wound down, went to bed. So that's kind of your narrative, your story of the day. A trauma memory doesn't store that way. It stores as senses. So if I were in a car accident, I might remember what it looked like in the rearview mirror when I saw that that car wasn't going to stop, or the smell of spilled gasoline, or the sound of breaking glass, or the sensation of my arms hitting the steering wheel. It doesn't store so much as a story. So what EMDR does is it helps weave together those sense memories and into a narrative form, and helps us digest it so it stops feeling present, like in a flashback, and moves into the past. So it doesn't mean that you're going to forget what you went through, but it takes we call it the emotional valence. It takes the big emotion off the top. And so you can remember it and say, yeah, that's something I went through, but you don't necessarily still have every time you turn that particular corner.
Yeah. It's interesting because the other day a friend of my son's passed away, and I was reading the obituary, and he was 23 years old. Mm-hmm. I immediately went to my own son's funeral.
Of course.
And I'm thinking, why is this happening?
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to think about it. I was just reading the other thing. Awesome, boom.
Well, they say that every loss triggers prior losses. So if someone loses a pet, it may trigger the loss of a parent.
Yeah.
And so, because we never, there's a layer of mourning underneath every layer of mourning. And it's really important to do. I like to contrast mourning, and actually there's a section in the book about the importance of mourning, with drama, because mourning's vital. We need to, that's our regular, you might think of it as bailing. To move the pain out of we feel it and let it go. If we try to stop it, if we try to pretend not to feel it, it builds up.
Yeah.
Can I read you
Yes.
a little bit
Yeah.
here? There's a piece that, we're all containers for feelings. This is rule 2. Whatever difficulties, pain, and trauma that we experience and have not yet fully processed, go in the container and wait. Stew, ferment, pressurize. Sometimes we would rather not deal with old pain, but would prefer to ignore it, like a splinter that would be uncomfortable to remove. We hope that it will dissolve or work its own way out. Sometimes we're right. But all too often, the area around the splinter gets red and sore. It festers and painfully reminds us of what we've not yet faced and dealt with. Without proper care, our containers can leak, overflow, or explode, or the task of holding the contents in takes all our energy. A lot of human effort and energy is spent keeping the lid on. When all your energy goes to this task, it starts to feel like there's a heavy weight on your chest. Everything is just too hard. So that's almost diagnostic of depression. It's like all of your energy is trying not to express what you're feeling.
And I feel, when I do talks on my book, one of the things I stand up there and say, I'm the luckiest person in the room. And people just look at me. And I say, I can talk about my son. You can't. And that to me is a very sad thing, because container, it just sits there and it builds and builds and builds and builds. And when my son died, that was one of the things for some ungodly reason, I kept trying to get that out of my mind, off my chest, so I could tell people this is the way I feel. And that's why I wrote the book, because I had to get it out. I knew that it would fester and drive me nuts. Container.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important. The people got to get the stuff out and talk to somebody.
Yeah. People think that you have to be crazy to go to therapy. And I say you go to therapy so you don't get crazy.
Yeah.
Again, it's bailing. You get somebody who creates a space for you to talk about what you're talking about, or what what you're feeling, or gives you language to talk about what you're feeling. That's part of why I wrote this, is that I found myself giving some of the same tools to different clients, and I decided to write essays to give them, to take home with them as homework so that the process of therapy would go faster. And ultimately, the collection of essays told me they wanted to be a book.
Yeah.
So that's how this came about.
I would suggest go to the library, go wherever you can, get a copy of this book and read it and pick out what pertains to you. Mm-hmm. Because there's so many different facets in here that I've been through them all, I think. But you pick out something that will help you. Read it, understand it, and if you don't understand it, send me a note and we'll get a hold of Elaine.
Yeah. Well, people have asked me why rules. Why do you say 5 rules? And it kind of goes under, like I said, gravity. It's the law. These are from my point of view, these are the facts of how emotions work. These are the facts of how these dynamics happen in our lives. So it's instructional in that sense. And I normally will teach these to my clients to give us a common language to talk about what they're going through.
And like I was telling you, the therapy that I went through, 13 months of it. And at the end, I was actually inventing things because I didn't know what else to say. Mm-hmm. I was feeling that good until he finally said, "You don't need to come here anymore." But he never really, I'll bet you if he said 100 words.
Well, like I said, different therapies work different way.
Yeah.
I'm much more proactive in therapy because I believe that part of my job is to teach people skills. We're not raised generally to know how to talk about our feelings. We're not encouraged to be able to process in a healthy way. And so this is really about taking responsibility for how you feel and learning how to become more aware of what's going on and when you need to process it.
And if you get stuck in one of these, you probably do need something there.
Well, I think everybody needs a tune-up every 10 years. That's kind of my general rule. And it doesn't mean that you necessarily need to be in therapy for 13 months. It may mean that you need to see somebody for a few times. That's one of the reasons EAPs are fabulous, employee assistance programs, because people can use, they can think of a therapist as a consultant. Somebody who can help you decide what you're in right now. Are you making decisions about what to do in retirement? Are you struggling in your relationship? Are you wondering what your life purpose is? Yeah. Are you dealing with something in the container like childhood molestation or the loss of an important person in your life? To get somebody who understands the dynamics of that kind of experience and can help you put it into perspective. The problem is we tend to blame ourselves when we don't feel good. We're in a society now that's all about, think positive. Yeah. Well, good, think positive, but recognize that you have a responsibility to be honest with yourself about what's going on.
Yeah.
And there's also that tendency to blame other people for how we feel. And that is, I address that in Rule 1.
And I think too much of therapy is on TV, either in the shows, the TV shows, and they really make light of it.
Therapists get a bad rap in a lot of...
she's in therapy again.
Therapists are easy to make fun of.
Yeah.
Because it is kind of it's kind of the therapist's job to be a blank screen, because the client is the most important person in the room. Yeah. So people tend to make up stories in their minds about who a therapist is or what they are, and traditional, like Freudian lie on the couch, don't even see the therapist kind of thing, really plays on that, really is built on, the Freudians call it transference, and it really is the idea that you kind of invent what the therapist's role is. And the more active the therapist is, the less transference can happen, because the more you're dealing with the person who's actually in the room rather than whatever it is whatever role you're putting them in your mind.
Yeah, but they make fun of them so much on
Yep,
TV.
they do.
That irritates me, because it stops the person from going to a therapist. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on TV that's not terribly useful.
There is. The other thing, the idea was the number 3, feelings do not mature. Mm-hmm. I thought that was impressive, because they really don't.
Well, it has to do with the different areas of the brain. The deep limbic system, so if you kind of imagine between your ears and all the way down to the base brain, there are areas that process emotion and survival. They're really about survival. And I call that your feeler. So when you're in your feeler, which is to say when your emotions are activated, a lot of times it literally takes over the brain. And the prefrontal cortex, the feeler, the most adult part of the brain, doesn't get any, the brain runs on glycogen. Glycogen? Yeah. It's basically sugar water. So let's say you're driving down the road and another vehicle starts to drift into your lane. It doesn't support your survival for you to stop and think, oh, what shall I do? You have to go right into survival mode. So your body will do what it's been trained to do, what it's practiced doing, and you will swerve and you will get into a different lane and get out of the way of that saber-tooth SUV.
Yeah.
Your primitive survival mode takes the wheel. Literally, the thinker brain is offline.
Yeah.
Your feeler brain saves you. And then the big question is, what story do you tell yourself about it? Because if you focus then on your own driving, your brain will calm down, and you'll get your thinker brain back pretty fast. But if that particular vehicle happens to look very like a person who used to be your angry neighbor,
Okay.
or your ex's boyfriend, if you've got an emotional reaction to that vehicle, even though after you've made your maneuver to be safe, you start telling yourself, oh, that's so-and-so. I don't believe he's out on the road today. And so what you do is you activate the feeler brain again, and you're not driving your car. Your inner child is driving your car.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're still keeping that OMG experience going in your brain.
Huh.
And that's part of the problem of anything that activates us emotionally.
Yeah.
Whether it's sometimes sports, sometimes politics, sometimes, whatever's happened earlier in the day.
Yeah.
When we get emotionally activated, we don't act like grown-ups. But there's science behind that. It's not a personal failing. It is the way the brain functions.
Yeah, we do have a tendency to act like children. The children are better behaved. What we practice, we become. Mm-hmm. I like that. Mm-hmm. Because I think it's true. It's like what we eat. We become.
Yes.
And it does take some practice. I know when I lost my son, I got so angry, which is part of the process.
Course. Yeah.
And I grabbed a friend of mine. I was going to punch him. And that's not me. And I calmed myself down. I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't feel this angry because I'm losing the sight of my son passing. Yeah. And I did that myself. 25 years ago, there was not a lot of help out there for people like me. There was none. Yeah. And so you really had to go through it yourself. I talked to one priest that helped me. He was an Episcopal priest. And he told me a couple things I could look for. But that's basically what I try to do is try to get the information out, get it out of my head, and write a book. And And my book was supposed to be about how nice my son was. And it's anything but.
Well, the idea of what we practice, we become, which is actually a quote from the Buddha, but it really is an examination of what happens in the brain. Think about this. When you first rode a bicycle, it did not feel natural.
Yeah.
And the more you practiced, the more your brain knew how to do it without your having to think about it.
Yeah.
So as you practice something, you're creating neural pathways, little shortcuts in the brain that take over from your thinker. Your thinker doesn't have to do it anymore, so you can ride a bicycle and talk to your friend at the same time, or drive a car and listen to the radio. So that capacity, it's called a subcortical program. Your brain creates these little programs that it calls into use at different times. So when we practice exploding when we're upset, we get better at exploding. And so when we practice telling ourselves that somebody else is a jerk, we get better at blaming other people. So what I believe is most useful is to find ways to practice being more generous, emotionally generous with people, taking responsibility for our own choices, and practicing those when we're not upset, practicing deep breath, nice, long, slow, deep breaths. When we're not upset, we build those neural pathways, so when we're upset, they kick in. Just like that maneuver that kicks in because you've built what I call the squirrel in the road program in your brain, because as an experienced driver, you know how to dodge things that are in the road. That program that you had already built helps you move out of the way. And so when we build programs for self-calming, for dealing with little bits of stress, they're there for us when we get bigger stresses.
Yeah, I can see that. And I remember I was dating a lady who had some trauma in her life, and it was just after I lost my son. And she was all upset because of this thing that happened. I said, I can't do anything about your memories. I can't do anything about what happened. I said, all I can do is help you build new memories and slide the other ones over. I said, they'll never go away. Just slide them over a little. And that's a practice that we did for 10 years.
Can I read you another section of the book? People are a little bit confused by what I mean by drama. And one of the things that I say in the book and that I routinely explain to people is that life is going to bring you drama. There's going to be stuff on your doorstep one way or another, just because it's real. What I'm talking about when I'm talking about avoiding drama is avoiding the wallowing, avoiding the steering toward the pain, except right there in therapy.
Yeah.
But otherwise, or in your writing, because obviously writing is one of the ways you move stuff out of the container. But there is another kind of drama. If you think about theater, there are places where a little bit of drama makes things spicier. So if you think about theater, if you think about the lively arts in general, and there's something that's called wahoo, and you were talking about making good memories.
Yeah.
This is under the importance of wahoo. One online discussion of a recent Tom Robbins novel talks about wahoo this way: that mysteriously generated concentrate of exhilaration, sometimes referred to as syrup of wahoo, a kind of emotional extract produced by the simultaneous boiling down of beauty, risk, wildness, and mirth. One big part of taking good care of our containers is the experience of simple joy in the moment, laughing aloud, singing with the band or the radio, dancing, being intellectually stimulated, having a delightful sex life, breathing the ocean's mist, basking in the light. Remember that the Wahoo factor is wonderful for stress relief and mood management. So adding joy is one, it's like clearing the container of the negative stuff, but also adding joy. I think of depression as twofold. Sometimes we have depression because we don't have enough joy. Sometimes we have it because we have pain that we need to process. But sometimes it's about what's missing rather than what there's too much of.
In laughter and joy, I know I couldn't laugh for a year because it made me feel guilty.
Yeah.
And because I can't laugh. This can't be funny.
This somehow feels like a betrayal.
Yeah, you can't laugh. I couldn't eat steak. I love the stuff that we did. But that's, we got about 3 minutes.
Okay.
That's been a quick one.
It has. Do you want to talk about where we can get my book?
Oh, we're going to do that too.
Okay, good.
Yeah, why don't we do that right now?
Okay.
Bank Square Books and Mystic has the book, The 5 Rules for Drama-Free Living. And if you practice this stuff, it's not going to eliminate all your drama, but it's going to help. And if it does, if you get drama, you learn how to get rid of it. Savoy Books in Westerly.
Yeah.
Beautiful place.
It's a great place.
Gorgeous.
They do such a good job.
They do.
Yeah.
Small Potatoes Gift Shop and the Bacchus Hospital.
Those are two different shops.
Yeah, the two different ones. And the Bacchus Hospital Gift Bookshop in Norwich. And on Amazon, both print and e-book. Anything else? You got about 30 seconds.
Not off the top of my head. I've really enjoyed this, and I'm happy to answer any questions. My email address and phone number are on the screen somewhere,
Yeah.
and I'm happy to respond to any questions that people have.
Good. It's been fun. A couple of quick notes. I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. And if you have any questions, please contact Elaine or me. And you can even call the station. They probably got it. Last week I reported all the good things about March. Spring equinox, daylight savings time, spring baseball, NASCAR, racing, Match Madness, and St. Patrick's. I forgot to say that March also comes in like a lion. Dumping 3 nor'easters on us. I'm ready to get out of this. And I think we may even have one on Monday or Tuesday, so stay warm. Pork Tuck VFW is still having their fish and chips, and they will until Easter, every Friday night. Let me know if you like the shows. Email me at santostom@comcast.net, and if you have any questions or anything, suggestions, let me know. And you can watch the past shows on YouTube. Go to sec-tv.org and press the button and pick your shows to watch. There's a lot of them on there. Not just mine, but a lot of people's. All the shows that we do. Special thanks to Frank and Frank at SEC-TV for helping me host this show. By the way, we operate on donations. If you like your shows and can afford a couple of bucks, they'd appreciate it. Thank you for watching. You should be reading. Cuddle up with a good book. And this nights are still kind of cool. And be kind, smile, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.